my name is Rachel Adams. I'm a doula, a yoga instructor, and a real estate agent here in Virginia. And this is our home birth podcast with Serene support. So I'm going to throw it over to Caitlyn.
Hi, my name is Caitlyn Fontaine. I am also a doula and a postpartum placenta specialist. I'm here to tell you today about my experience with pregnancy and birth.
Wonderful. So let's start with number one.
Okay, so my oldest is Emma Drew. I had her in a city near Kansas City, Missouri, and she is 8.5. So 8 years ago, I experienced my first hospital birth. Completely uneventful experience. I mean, just like perfect pregnancy, little illness, little ailments, just perfect birth. I was from that point on completely in love with the whole idea of pregnancy and birth and just everything that's going to happen to the mama and the baby every step of the way. And that is actually what kind of sparked my interest in becoming a birth worker in general. It was something that I knew I always wanted to be involved in. And from the moment I found out I was pregnant, I really just dove into all of the research, all of the options, educating myself as much as I could. And I had that awesome hospital experience. But I knew that next time around, I wanted it to be different, right? So moving forward a handful of years, I moved back to my home state, and the relationship with the father of my oldest ended. Some time went by, and I met my partner, Nick, and a couple years into our relationship, we decided to try to have a baby. I found out that I was pregnant, and I got a hold of a home birth midwife. I started seeing her, and everything was going well for the first handful of weeks, normal growth, all of that. And then unfortunately, one night while I was serving at my job, I felt a little trickle, and it was around 16 weeks. And I'm like, wetting yourself during pregnancy is not uncommon. That may just be what this is. So I go home and I change my pants and I get back to work because it was a busy shift and I was ready to make the money, and it happened again. And I'm like, I know that wasn't my bladder this time. So I called my midwife, and we had determined that, yes, my water had broken. And so from that point on, I was kind of put on bed rest, and it was like a wait and see kind of situation. Not really too much that they can do for premature rupture of membranes. Obviously, you're watching out for any infection or fever to develop, right? Or just for your labor to progress at that point. So we were kind of in this situation where it felt like, the other shoe was going to drop. We didn't know if this baby was going to make it to viability. We didn't know what was going to happen. So a lot of bed rest, a lot of just, resting and just hoping for the best. And then ultimately so around 23, 24 weeks, we learned that the baby was just not going to make it. So we went to the hospital, and unfortunately we came home without our baby. Very devastating. It's something that's unfortunately so common, but it doesn't take away how painful it can be. My family was prepared to have a baby. My daughter was looking forward to meeting her sibling. We chose not to find out the gender, and then we ultimately never did find out. And I'm sure I could look. I'm sure it's on record somewhere, but it's not something that I've been able to do quite yet. So it's very surprising how soon after a loss like that, even a later term loss, how soon you can try to conceive again. So, we waited until I had another period, which was about 6 weeks. And then we kind of talked about, let's give my body a little bit more time to recover. So it was about 2 months later then that I had conceived Abby. So, unfortunately, through no one's fault, I don't think, I chose to sever ties with that particular midwife that I had been seeing. And I chose to go a different route. I met this wonderful nurse midwife and her team. Her name is Rachel Harris. And I had just a beautiful experience with her. She just really made sure that I felt cared for. She involved my family, answered every question that my partner and I had, made him very comfortable with the idea because he was kind of scarred from the previous experience, and just really made us feel good about the decision to go through with delivering this baby at home, despite the experience that we had had before. So, again, another just like fairly easy pregnancy. I did deal with a kind of a frequent like urinary tract infection issue, but other than that, I had a really healthy pregnancy. Baby was perfect, beautiful, wonderful, amazing. And so the sort of like a couple of days before she was born, I had an appointment to sweep my membranes. I was about 40 weeks. And the assistant who did it had a very gentle touch, and I don't think it was super effective at that time. But then, a week later, I go back and I'm 41 weeks at this point, and the midwife did a little bit more of an aggressive sweep, I would say. And I was driving home from her house, which was about 45 minutes away from my own. And the whole time I'm having these contractions, and it's like, maybe like 1 or 2 in the afternoon. And I called my partner, Nick, while I was on the way home, and he was going to work. He had just gotten this, picked up this new serving job. And so I go in to see him, and I was going to get some food and drop off the car. So my sister met with me, and we sat at the bar and, ate a meal, and I'm having these contractions, and it's getting more and more intense. And I'm like, yeah, I think we're going to have a baby like really soon. And he's like, all right, let me get through this shift real quick. So, my sister takes me home and she helps me clean up a couple of things. I think my mom had my daughter, my oldest. And so she brought her to me at some point. And, Nick came home. And by the time he came home, it was like 8 or 9 o'clock, I would say. And things had really started picking up for me. When Emma came home, we were like, how can we enjoy our last moments of just us 3, right? So we put in a movie, and I'm having a hard time focusing on the movie. I'm really just moving around the whole apartment, getting up and down off the floor and putting myself in all of these positions, trying to cope with the sensations of labor. And so by the time it was her bedtime, we laid in bed and we took a few pictures of just us 3. And you can kind of tell in some of those pictures that like, I'm trying to ignore these contractions. But yes, it was starting to be difficult. So I left Nick in the room with Emma to finish putting her down, and I labored on our bed for a while. And when he came out, I'm like, okay, I think it's time for us to call, our team. So we call Rachel, and she's like, okay, I'm on my way. I'm going to come in and fill up the pool right away. So she came in and filled up the pool. And at that point, I was like, not trying to get out. You could not have paid me to get out of that tub for quite some time. It felt like such a relief. It was just night and day with the way I was able to cope with the contractions. And I really do feel like, yes, just being completely submerged in the water like that was what did it for me for quite some time. So, yeah, my aunt came to photograph. My two sisters came partially so that they could experience birth in real life. They did not get to see Emma's birth because they were still in school and I was out of state. And also to help me with Emma. I knew that one of the important parts of my labor was that Emma got to be there. And with her only being 5, she still needed quite a bit of care. And it just happened to work out that she was sleeping, all night long, and I labored all night long. But I knew I needed somebody there to kind of help her along, as well as Nick and I were very busy.
That's so neat. So your sisters and your daughters both experienced birth at the same time.
Yes. And you ask my sisters about it and they say that it's just one of the most profound moments for them. And it makes them feel so much closer to everyone, having shared that experience. It's a very bonding experience, right? So, and I've always felt very maternal toward my sisters. I'm 7 and 9 years older than them. So being the person that got to show them what this experience could be like, in a world where it's not as common to deliver your babies this way, it was a really cool thing for me to be able to invite them into. So yeah, I labored all through the night, and we tried to get me out of the tub, and I would get up and go to the bathroom and have some contractions on the toilet, which it's the dilation station thing is totally true. It's like, that was so intense, what with being out of the water and the effect of gravity, but also being on the toilet. It was just insane how intense those contractions got. So, yeah, lots of laboring, primarily just in the bedroom where the tub was, where the pool was, and the bathroom. And at one point, my midwife was like, you may have a cervical lip, and that's what seems to be, she never said the word stalling, but retrospectively, I recognize that maybe things had slowed down and I was doing all the position changes and, nothing was really happening. Things were happening, but baby wasn't crowning quite yet, right? So she was like, if you'd like, I can get you out of the tub. We can check you to see if there's a cervical lip, and maybe I can move that around baby's head and things can progress a little bit quicker here. And I'm like, there's no way in hell you're getting me out of this tub. So I think I'll just stay here. And she's like, that's okay. I checked you earlier today. It's no problem at all. So it wasn't very long after that, I say, in my brain, where there really was no time or space, when you're in that birth mindset, you have no concept of time really. But it felt like not much later, I was moving more onto my knees and, trying to push this baby out. And somebody went to get Emma, and she had just been waking up. And when I saw her, I realized, okay, the baby must be coming soon, because this means that she has slept all night long. I have labored all night long. Baby must be coming. So I saw her face, and it was just this beautiful moment for me to be able to see her and all of our plans to kind of align and come to fruition, where she gets to be a part of it. The end is near. There's my little bit of encouragement right there in her sweet little face, right? And so that was, I think, just something that I really needed, was to see her and to recognize, okay, she really does get to be a part of this time, right? So yeah, I started pushing, and we had done all kinds of things. I was squatting and people were supporting me. We had one of the handles with the rope and Nick was, pulling me. And we were doing everything under the sun. And eventually, I started crowning, and the midwife had noticed that my bag of water hadn't broken yet. So it was very hands off and, just kind of let me push. And eventually she came out. She was delivered right into her dad's arms, and completely with the bag of water intact.
Wow.
And so that only happens in about like 1 in 80,000 births, something like that. So it's kind of rare to see, but less rare in home births because breaking the water isn't something that you see often in the home birth setting, right? So just crazy to me, kind of to come full circle with my pregnancy before, that my water broke far too soon with that baby. And this next one, Abigail, her water wouldn't break for anything, So it kind of felt like in that moment, the universe or God or whatever, whatever you believe, was kind of like, I got your back, I can get you through this. And here's a little bit of healing and a tad bit more closure, maybe, knowing that your body can sustain life again and can do it in a way where, you get to experience this kind of rare thing where her bag of water never broke. It was kind of a cool to come full circle sort of experience, right?
That's awesome.
So from there, one of the coolest parts of home birth is that, yes, they want to monitor you. Yes, they want to get the APGAR on the baby. They want to weigh and measure and do all of those wonderful things that are very important to do. But also, I got to stand up from that tub and walk like 3 feet to my very own bed. Where I was comfortable and I was able to, get my few stitches and all of that. But to have my baby right there with me and have a bed that was big enough for my partner to get into as well. And we could have this moment as the 4 of us together as a family. And then from there, we fed the midwives and they cleaned up. My one sister, Daisy, actually got the short end of the stick and emptied the pool for us, which I will always thank her for. But yeah, then my mom and my grandma came and they took Emma to breakfast since it was still very early in the morning. And Nick and I got to lay in our bed and cuddle and discover our brand new baby. It was a very intimate kind of experience. It was a very just calming and serene, sort of surreal experience that I was so grateful to be able to experience. It's just the coolest thing. To have a baby in general can be a crazy and profound experience, but to be able to have it be that way, it was just really cool for me. And now, being in the field I'm in and people knowing that, people will ask my partner questions all the time and be like, how could you do that? And he was like, I won't have it any other way. There's no way I'll have another baby in the hospital again if I can help it, So just really cool.
That's great to hear because some men are worried about it, but then he got to experience it and he loved it. Wow.
Yes. Oftentimes I'm one of the first people that a couple will speak to when they are pregnant and they find out that, maybe I want to have a hospital birth, maybe I want to have a home birth. And it's usually the partner that is way more hesitant to move forward with a home birth. So I'm lucky I got a good one who just went along for the ride and trusted me in that.
That's awesome. And it also helps to have a great midwife who said that she helped answer all your questions. And after a loss, that's huge, just to have that trust in someone.
Yes. And she definitely made a point of it to hold space for that experience too. You know, she was just wonderful in supporting me through that. Her whole team, they come highly recommended. I love them.
Awesome. So when you were first talking about your first pregnancy and birth, you talked about having lots of resources and everything. Is there anything you'd suggest for a mother that's just pregnant, not necessarily wanting a home birth, but just some good resources for her to look into?
Yeah, so I really love looking into. So I personally am the research kind of person. I like to find the actual evidence. I like to find what is best practice. I do find that some sites tend to share information that kind of delivers birth in one particular kind of way. So I do like to have people look into other people's birth stories and kind of just hear about other people's experiences, as well as looking into the actual evidence, you know, in terms of like what all of your options are, right? So
That's great. That's why I'm doing this. I'd love to hear about other people's stories, and I love to share that with other people, because sometimes it's daunting to think about a home birth, but when you hear positive experiences of other people having it, you get this sense of, oh yeah, I can do it. Like, it's possible.
yeah, I think talking to like local midwives in your area can be a huge help. I think that, you know, I
Can't hear you. Heard talking to local midwives. You're good. I can edit all of this later.
that's so frustrating. I'm sorry, I missed that part.
It's okay. So you ended with talking to local midwives. So just pick up from there.
Yeah, I think it's good to go right to the source of the people who would be caring for you during your pregnancy too. You know, with the stories can sometimes come some misinformation, right? So going right to the source and kind of asking them, what would you do given this scenario, and what would truly risk me out of a home birth, and you know, what are you comfortable with, and things like that. Those are important questions to ask as well.
That's great. And I'd love to talk about postpartum. It's so cool to hear your home birth story where you got to, lay in your big comfy bed and you all got to be together. Some people are worried not having like the nurses in the nursery. And I always was confused because I would love to lay in my own bed, go to the bathroom in my own bathroom, and, take a shower in my own shower. But how is that different for the hospital birth?
Yeah, so at the hospital, they are coming in to check on you every so often. They want to do so many fundal massages within the first couple of hours. They want to, continue to monitor your blood pressure and heart rate and all of that stuff. And all of those things are very important. But in the home birth setting, you do get that same kind of care. It just looks a little bit different. So they will stay and monitor you for a little while after you deliver, and then they come back the next day as well. And then they tell you to go in to see your pediatrician to get your baby's, bilirubin checked and things like that too. And then you should be given information to see or to have an IBCLC come to help with tongue ties and lip ties, if that is the way that you are choosing to feed your baby by breast. And yeah, I mean, they will also have you come to their office, or they will come to you for your 6-week appointment. And two, I really like the idea of just like, it's a more personal kind of relationship that you're building, because you have your midwife's number and you can text them at any point throughout the day or night, and they're there for you, a little different than the, you have to call and leave a message and then have your, OB call you back if they find it important enough to get back to you right away, or do you have to wait until the next business day or whatever, so it's just a more intimate kind of relationship that I really appreciate.
Great. And you know that your midwife's going to be there for the most part. I know that there are some situations where a quick labor or she's at another birth, she has a backup midwife. But most of the time when you're in the hospital, you usually get the on-call OB. So you never know what you're going to get. So I think that's really great to have a personal experience. And it's such an intimate thing to give birth. So knowing the person that's going to help you along can help.
Yeah, it is. And, you know, the prenatals can look a little bit different too. One of the midwives on the team that I saw offered a massage, and we really didn't do much else in that appointment other than just talking about a few quick things, you know, testing my urine. And then she was like, let's lay you down on the table and give you a massage. And I'm like 38 weeks pregnant. And I'm like, could you just, that would be wonderful. You know, I've never had an OB offer to massage my back or my feet,
wow,
right?
That's so neat. I haven't heard of that either. Wow. Definitely personalized care for sure.
It is. It is. And I understand that the idea of having a home birth can be kind of a daunting and overwhelming thing, but it really just feels night and day, the kind of care that you can receive. You know, it sucks to think that you're kind of just a vessel, and you're going to, I don't want to paint, to paint hospital births in a negative light, but I do know that some people can feel like, you know, you're kind of just a pregnant person going into a baby mill and you're kind of just being pushed along and you're just a face having a baby. And I hate to hear about stories like that, you know, it's sad. So I always want, if people are receptive to the information, I always want to share that, you know, having a home birth could be a completely safe and just intimate kind of experience that, you know, people should be open-minded to.
Yes, that's great. And I read that maternal care shifted when we went to OBs instead of midwives in a way that OBs focus on baby, but midwives focus on mom and baby. And not to say that OBs don't care about the mother, but I think it's great to have, you know, a midwifery care, but also have a doula. And I know that you get that because you're a birth worker as well, and they care more emotionally, physically, less clinical, medically, about mom. How is mom feeling? How are you doing? So,
and also the partner. How can we help to support the partner in a way that doesn't make them feel like they're kind of just like floating off into space, overwhelmed with all of these crazy emotions, because they're going through it too. You know, they're seeing a person that they love deeply go through a kind of pain that they can't do a thing about. And so having, you know, the midwife or the doula kind of say, hey, this is normal, and this pain is temporary. It's very important. So it's kind of like, it's more like whole family care, right? You know?
Absolutely. That's wonderful. And there are some programs that the husband can go through, you know, if you don't necessarily want a doula. I mean, we talked about the Bradley method on my last podcast, and that was great. That's partner-led support. So,
yeah.
So lots of resources for women that are about to give birth. I loved how you talked about just talking to local midwives. They'll answer your questions even if you're not like signed on with them. Like ask your questions, ask what they feel comfortable with and what they would transfer you for. And that's different in every state. So some states have laws that, you know, you can't deliver a breech birth at home and stuff like that. So just research for yourself, and that makes you feel empowered. It makes you feel powerful that you know these things. You know, it's not a surprise when it happens.
Right. Yeah. And they are happy to answer the questions, even if you never hire them as your midwife, just to kind of combat the misinformation that's going on, you know. And same with really any kind of birth worker, right? The role of a doula can sometimes be a little bit misunderstood. There are a lot of misconceptions surrounding what the scope of practice is, and same also with a midwife. So even if, you know, there are just some curiosities that you have, it's totally worth it to reach out and ask those questions. because we all want to kind of fight the stigma that some birth workers get, right?
For sure. That's great. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. Any more words of wisdom you'd give a mother that's thinking about having a home birth?
Yeah, so definitely hire a doula. Just invaluable support, and so much by way of information that can be shared. And it's like having a birth guide. It's like having a tour guide for birth, rather, right? And yes, never stop asking questions. You know, a lot of providers will say, well, if we need to, ask what necessitates need. Why would you need to? That's a huge one. So yeah, just never stop asking questions until you feel completely comfortable.
That's great advice. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. It was so powerful, and I love how we went through everything. And you know, a lot of women do have miscarriages, and I love how we honored that for you. And thank you so much for sharing that. I know that is, you know, difficult, but thank you.
It is, but thank you for sharing space. Like I said, I feel like, you know, sharing this kind of story definitely helps to honor that baby's life in a way that we wouldn't normally, right? So thank you for letting me share. It's been an honor to do that.
Awesome. I know that when you're going through that, I haven't personally been through it myself, but I know people that are close to me that have, and it can feel very lonely. And like when we don't talk about it, it's like, how can we make other people feel like they're not alone? And that's by talking about it and, you know, having those connections with people.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's worth it to share that kind of stuff, even if it's ugly and even if it hurts. If we don't talk about it, it can feel like it never happened, and it very much so did. And that experience is important and valid. So,
For sure. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your time and your story. I'm sure it will empower and inspire many women and their partners as well. I love how you brought that into it as well. There are such a big support partners, and your sisters and your mother and your daughter. I love how they all got to be a part of that. That's so special.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right. Well, I hope you have a great day.
Thank you. You as well. I'll hear from you soon, I'm sure.
Awesome. Yes. Well, thank you for listening. I hope you subscribe and like my channel, Serene Support. For more podcasts, I also post yoga videos, prenatal as well. So check those out. I will leave all the resources she told in the description. I'll try to find her midwife. So yeah, just check the description for all those resources. So good to ask questions. So thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a wonderful day.